What's going on, all? A non-TCG back for part two of why indies fail. And in this part, I'm going to spend some time talking about the demand side of the equation. So I bought boxes. I have boxes sitting here. What is the psychology of me as a seller? And I want to roll this into the sorcery contested realms example that we talked about in the first part. But I look at indie TCGs similar to penny stocks in Wall Street. As long as there's momentum and everybody wants to buy it and everybody's convinced it's going to the moon, there's going to be demand there. Whether there's an underlying company, it's a complete bag of garbage, or what, people are going to buy it. And as a simple example, look at MetaZoo. I don't know if you've ever tried to play MetaZoo. I tried to play it with my wife once, and we're just like, what the f is this? We had no idea what to do. So the underlying game was, garbage. The concept's okay. The art's, it is what it is, right? But people looked at it as valuable, and, waiting for it to take the next leg up. And it was effectively a penny stock. So, in the first part, I talked about the danger of sorcery and what can kill it with Arthurian legends is if they dump a second wave of product onto a market that can't absorb the amount of product. And having cheap product isn't necessarily a bad thing, except for in this instance where you're in indie TCG and there's tens of thousands of boxes sitting in closets and in shelves somewhere because people were able to get them relatively cheaply. They see that the alpha boxes went from 120 to 150 to a 10x, if you will. And beta box MSRP was right around $80, 78 to 81, depending on your distributor. Right now they're trading right around 185, and this was after the last little distribution drip to brick and mortar stores. It spiked down below MSRP and came back and recovered. So in the beta edition alone, we know there's probably 4 different waves that came in. We know there's 10 to 20,000 boxes that went to Singapore and were effectively shipped to the U.S. But we know for certain that there are tens of thousands of boxes sitting out there, quite honestly, owned by speculators, just waiting for the game to take off. And the game does have the ability to do so if they don't screw it up here. The problem is if the overall market loses faith in the company, and quite honestly, the management, nice group of people, but they've been a train wreck with execution. And the only reason why the market has confidence, it's not in the management, it's not the company, it's in the fact that the box prices have done nothing but go up and have been strong value-wise. No different than what we've seen with One Piece, what we saw with MetaZoo. Obviously different backing, different mechanics and characteristics. But the second that Arthurian Legends boxes lose that momentum, and again, that would be almost 100% caused by too much supply in the market, the tens of thousands of boxes of beta, people are going to have that oh shit moment where it's like, okay, well, I need to sell this now, or what am I going to have? And I experienced it firsthand with MetaZoo. If you look at the Kickstarter boxes, they ran up to $10,000. So as they started selling backwards, as being involved with the store and in the space for a long time, people would be like, hey, I know you were interested in a box at X $1,000. Now it's $1,000 cheaper. You should love it now. It's like if you liked it at 40, you'll love it at 30, right? The infamous Wall Street quote. So, what we'll see in that instance is a lot of the online retailers will just dump the product. They'll sell it at $100 to try to blow it out. And look, the TCG community isn't the most economically educated folks on the planet. So they'll be like, oh, look, I can buy a box for $100. It's a great deal, not knowing that it's 100 on its way to 80 and 50 and so on. So boxes will start coming down. You'll have the smart Timmies, if you will, look at the box price and say, oh shit, I better sell this because it's not looking so good. So they'll sell, and selling begets selling. So it's going to end up being an avalanche into, quite honestly, no demand. There's a handful of players, 300-400 hardcore players that show up at the events that they've had. And look, I'm sure the player base is much larger than that. And but the unfortunate part about this is players don't have money. Players don't spend money, generally speaking. People who spend money on TCGs are investors, collectors. They're not 18, 20-year-old kids living with their parents. Let's call it like it is. So the second that an indie TCG, and again, in this case study, Sorcery, and we don't know what directions it's going to go, which makes it super interesting. The second that they lose consumer confidence on the economic side, it's just going to be a race to zero. And the new product's going to get slaughtered because nobody's going to want it except for the players. And quite honestly, they've already bought the product that they want. And, maybe they crack it a little bit later for fun. But, the economics of this marketer, a lot of it's done on Facebook. A lot of it's done on Discord. The company didn't even want to do TCG Play early on because they wanted the old school feel, which was the most incompetent thing I think I've ever heard. Now, fortunately, they came around and they did it relatively quickly, but it's like, guys, it's 2023. It's not like 1983. Like, what are you talking about? So anyway, if we see this dump, there's going to be a massive buy-sell imbalance where there's thousands of people or thousands of boxes trying to get sold on the market and to get liquidity, and effectively nobody buying. So it's no different than your limit down. You own a stock, they miss earnings big, they open up 15% down. It's going to be the same, but there's just not going to be any buying support. So, the unfortunate thing is, hopefully the company understands this, but I'm sure most people don't understand. There's really no middle ground. There's no keeping everybody happy in a scenario like this. And we've seen what happens when companies go the players route. You end up with flesh and blood where, look, you have a lot of hardcore players. And quite honestly, 2 weeks after the set's out, the boxes just sit there and rot because there's no collectors. Nobody's cracking them. Nobody gives a shit. The only money to be made is your arbitrage between your single sales and what you have to pay from distribution. So, as long as they keep the product relatively limited, they manage the volume that's coming out of the market, and they keep the value of boxes up, there will be collectors and investors in the product. There's already enough attention, enough money, enough cool stuff in the product. I mean, there's some dumb curios, but there's a lot of really cool creative stuff. And quite honestly, the gameplay is good. At least it's good enough for a bunch of 30, 40, 50-year-old dudes to sit around and play for an hour every now and then and collect the sets like we all did back in the day. So, when we think about indies and how indies fail, you have the yin and yang. So you have the company where if they get greedy and they dump product, they're going to fail. And then you have the consumer side of it, where if they see weakness in the pricing, regardless of what the reason is, they're going to dump the product if they're holding it, and the product's going to crumble. And there's no safety net because there's not enough of a player base or investor base. And quite honestly, they don't have IP. They're trying to build IP from scratch. And at least when you look at One Piece, they're leveraging an IP that, it's pretty wide and pretty well known. So, look, I wish these guys nothing but the best, but this is going to be a super interesting case study to see if they've learned from the recent mistakes of a bunch of games in the space, or if they just go down the path of incompetence and burn it to the ground. So that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation about part 1, part 2. If you enjoyed, like, subscribe, comment. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say, and join the Discord. Happy to chat. On that, signing out, guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.